Hi again.
Hey guys.
So this video, we're going to give a timeline of our TTC, or trying to conceive, as they call it in the infertility world.
Okay.
Our timeline of what we've done, our numbers, our counts, everything, so you can see our entire journey process, what has worked for us, what hasn't worked for us, and just get a sense of all that.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
This is, it's a little bit, it's quite a few details, and one thing that we figured out, because we've had to switch to a couple different doctors that dealt with different issues that we've had, we found out that it's really important to understand our own history, our own medical history, and that, you know, even though doctors can read each other's records and share each other's records, you know, what they're legally required to share versus what they end up talking to their patients about. Sometimes things can get lost in translations and they're kind of hard to find in the notes. So we found we're very educated about our results and what worked and didn't work in each one of our steps of our process. So we're able to share that with you. But I would encourage you to really understand your background, your process, you know, what seems to work, what doesn't work, because we found that that's very important to be your own advocate.
Yeah, if there's one piece of advice I can give to everyone going through infertility, it's that understand the process, understand what your numbers are, ask a lot of questions, even if it annoys the doctors because you're asking a lot of questions. I would say do it anyway. Be educated, and then be your own advocate, because there were times when I had to ask for things that were right to ask for, that the doctor either missed or didn't notice or whatever. And so it's really important to be your own advocate and be educated. Okay, so here's our timeline. In June of 2012, we got married. Boom. Got married. We knew that we didn't want to get pregnant in grad school, but I am not the nicest person on birth control. I'm actually not nice at all. Instead of doing any birth control, we just temped. We knew when we were ovulating, and we're just careful around ovulation. So anyway, in 2014, we started like trying, as in, you know, before we were just temping and not doing birth control, not preventing, but in 2014, we knew exactly when I was ovulating, because we just spent a year, you know, doing these spreadsheets and figuring it all out. So we were like trying to get pregnant. So after 6 to 9 months of that not working, because I was in my 20s at that point, so it realistically could have worked.
Yeah, it should have worked.
27. Yeah. So we went to the gynecologist, and just at my normal pap smear, said, hey, we've been trying to get pregnant. So we took the Femera cycles, just moved my ovulation up a little bit, make sure 100% I was ovulating, went in for blood work, make sure my progesterone was good, and all. It didn't work. So you refer this out to a reproductive endocrinologist. So we ended up at Midwest Fertility in Indianapolis. He said, let's do some more testing, see what's happening. So there were a few tests that they ran. Everything came back normal. I was on the lower end of normal for a couple things for my age, but still normal.
And they did a sperm analysis.
His count was like off the charts.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, feel pretty good about that. Basically, it was like there wasn't any smoking gun that said this is what should be causing you to not be able to have a baby. And so we went to the next step.
So they did a test called an HSG, where they put dye through your tubes just to make sure your tubes are open, to rule that out. That came back completely normal. And so he said, let's just try an insemination cycle. It's called an IUI. So we took some injectable medications, made sure I was ovulating. In January, I ovulated a really good egg follicle.
And they were doing ultrasound, so we knew things were going well. They were monitoring the cycle.
And knew that we weren't ovulating too many, because we, you know, you want to get pregnant, but you also want to not have 8 babies, because that can get dangerous for everybody. So we did that completely failed. The next month we took a little bit more medication so that we were ovulating 2 follicles instead of just 1. The nurse was like, be prepared, you could get twins because you're ovulating 2. I was like, that's fine, I'll take my chances at this point. It's been a few years. And so that one completely failed. So after that, the doctor said, well, you have insurance coverage only up to a certain point, because they capped us let's stop spending money on the IUIs. Let's move on to IVF. And we were in agreement with that.
Yes.
We did that cycle. We ended up getting 10 eggs, 5 of them fertilized. On day 3, we had 2 8-cell embryos, 2 6-cell embryos, and 1 4-cell embryo. We elected to do a day 3 transfer of the 2 8-cell
discussion with
embryos.
the doctor, and they decided that was the best. So a lot of times you'll go till day 5, but because the eggs, they just weren't doing that well, so they decided at that point to try putting them in at day 3.
To transfer them. So we transferred them, did what's called a fresh transfer, and then the next day we went to Disney World. Which sucked. Not have been the best thing, because like I couldn't get in the pools, because after IVF you have to be really careful. I was like walking around Disney World. I actually had like a big boot on my foot because I'd broken my toe.
That's right, I forgot about that.
It was like a terrible decision. Anyway, so that cycle failed. So after that, I talked to the doctor, and I had been in an infertility group through Resolve. So Resolve is a great organization. And so I was talking to a couple of the women in the group, and they said, you might have immune issues because I already have a gluten allergy. And so we decided to look up a couple doctors that dealt with immunology. My current doctor at the time told me that that reproduction has nothing to do with the immune system, which I didn't believe, because I believe a lot of things have to do with the immune system. And so we found the doctor in St. Louis, Share Institute of St. Louis, and called her. She said, I don't think you have bad egg quality. I think you can get much better results with a different protocol. So we found Dr. Dial. She was great. So we drove from, we were living in Indianapolis at the time. We drove from Indianapolis to St. Louis, which was 4.5 or 5 hours. Did some diagnostic testing with her. She found out that I have something called high natural killer cells. She also did something called a saline sonogram. And that's when they just do an ultrasound, look at your uterus and everything, and found that I had polyps on my uterus. So a couple weeks later, I went and I got those polyps off of my uterus. She said it would have been very difficult to get pregnant, if at all, from our last IVF with those polyps on there. So we were glad that they were taken care of. And then we decided to do another IVF cycle with her. So in June, did another IVF egg retrieval and then transferred 2 embryos. Which was crazy. This time we did what's called a luteolupron cycle. We had 11 eggs retrieved, 10 fertilized, and 4 made it to day 5, which was fantastic. So we transferred 2 and we froze 2. That ended up in a chemical pregnancy. My HCG started to spike, and then by the time I got my second blood draw, it had dropped. So that happened in June. Like literally that day, the doctor called me and said, you know, this is happening. I went home from work early, called Nate, and we essentially at that point had been thinking about RVing, and we just said, you know what, we need a break. So within 6 weeks later, we had sold our house, quit our job, bought an RV.
Well, not quit. I worked out being able to do a remote part-time. You know, very fortunate that worked out. But yeah.
And I took some time off and started a consulting writing business. And so we still had 2 embryos left. So we did a lot of traveling, went to Australia and a lot of places in the U.S., had some fun.
Had a lot of wine in Australia.
And then in November of 2017, we transferred our 2 last embryos we have at that clinic. And we found out that we were pregnant.
Got pregnant.
5.5 weeks into our pregnancy. So just a week and a half after we found all that out, I started bleeding. We drove 16 hours like across the country because we were way out in like New Mexico and needed to get back to St. Louis.
We were in Albuquerque and we drove all the way to St. Louis with our RV, which was across Kansas. And anyways,
did an ultrasound, and at 5 weeks and 5 days, we saw a heartbeat, a little flutter of a heartbeat, which was amazing because I was bleeding. I thought I was miscarrying. And then on my 30th birthday in 2017, we went in for our 8-week ultrasound. Everything was great. Had a heartbeat of like 162, I think. So everything was good. And the first 2 ultrasounds, I had been bleeding. There had been problems. We thought that we were expecting
most times,
something to be wrong. At our 12-week, you know, I was still having a lot of symptoms. I was still on progesterone and all this stuff. So we thought everything was fine. So we went in first thing in the morning, and there was no heartbeat.
No heartbeat.
And it was Friday the 13th, too. And so we literally like went and processed and then drove straight to the hospital. And just a couple hours later, I was in having a DNC when we thought everything was fine.
Yeah.
So that was
and
really
they kept,
difficult.
the good thing about a DNC is that they were able to keep some of the tissue samples, because we always had a question about whether or not the eggs we produced are genetically normal. The embryos we produce are genetically normal. It was actually confirmed to be a genetically normal girl.
Yep.
Which was good and bad. So it was good because it said that we don't necessarily have genetic problems, but it was bad because it didn't explain.
We didn't have genetic problems with that one. We can
that,
produce
you're
genetically
right.
normal
We
embryos.
are able to produce genetically normal eggs, which is what was good.
Embryos. But bad because they had no cause for why we miscarried at all. And so we did the DNC, everything was normal. So I've always had super painful periods. So we went in to see another fertility doctor in the area that specializes in endometriosis. He said the only way to fully tell if you have endometriosis is to do surgery. At that point, we had already hit our deductible for our insurance, so we were like, go for it. Like, we
hit our out-of-pocket max on February
we had
9th or something. It was ridiculous.
So
it's
we
expensive.
were like, let's do it. And so we did the surgery. He confirmed stage 2 endometriosis. And so he said, after the surgery, you could potentially get pregnant within 6 months. So we did another Femera cycle with him. We monitored. We knew we were ovulating 2 eggs. Made sure everything was good, and that one failed. In that time, I did a lot of counseling, like regular counseling. I did chiropractic. I did acupuncture. I went to a naturopath. I was like, we've done all of this fertility stuff and can't figure out what's happening. I'm just going to try the natural route. So we did. We did a couple years of the natural route, and that still didn't happen. One of the things that people will say to you all the time is,
just relax
and you'll get pregnant.
Trying,
quit trying. So we literally did that for 2 years. We relaxed. We went hiking through the mountain. We went to all these national parks. We had fun.
Sunrise hike at Rocky Mountain National Park.
Yeah, I mean, we just had fun. We had a great couple years of just relaxing, and
it was good.
Yeah,
it was good for us for our relationship. Mentally, yes, it was good for us. So.
So last year, Nate took a new job, and we found out. It was crazy that we had fertility coverage again. Yep. Even if you have fertility coverage, you're still paying a lot because usually medications, which are $5,000 a cycle, are not covered. So we're still paying a lot, but it's better. We were paying $7,000 to $8,000 a cycle instead of 15 to 20. Yeah. And so we found out that he had coverage. We decided to go with a local clinic, Shady Grove, Atlanta. And we, in May of 2019, so about a year ago, we did an IVF egg retrieval with them. There were 16 eggs retrieved because my egg quality has actually gone up. So I was 32 when I did that cycle, and it went up from when I was 27, which was crazy. So we had 16, 11 fertilized, 11 made it to day 3, and 3 made it to freeze. And so we froze those. We decided to freeze all of them and do a frozen transfer because that was what worked before. Yeah. And so in August of 2019, we transferred 2, and that was completely negative. And then in January, we had 1 left, and we transferred it, and that was completely negative. So that was the last 8 years of our infertility journey. Honestly, it's a lot. Exhausting.
Yeah. It's a lot.
A lot of emotions. I don't even want to count how many pills, shots, doctor's appointments, hundreds and hundreds that we've done. But we're pushing forward because we are so ready to have a family, and just wanted to share our timeline with you. Hopefully it's encouraging if you haven't been through it this long, that hopefully it won't be as long for you. Yeah. But it does for some people just take time, and we're not sure why. And it's been a hard process, but one that I don't know that I would give up, because I feel like now that we've gone through this long to have kids, I won't take them for granted. And not saying that people take it for granted when they just get pregnant naturally very quickly, but this will make me, I'm sure, every day just think of how much I went through to have kids. So okay. So that was it.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
And I think, you'll see a lot of variations in videos. Some are going to be a lot of facts, a lot of information. Some are going to be about the emotional side, and some are going to be story time. I mean,
Hopefully
you guys
I won't be crying too much.
Yeah, well, and you guys can probably tell we've had some pretty crazy adventures in this process, and I hope that each one of you, you have your own story to tell in terms of this process, because it is one of the cool things. Okay, silver lining, yeah, I get it, but one of the cool things about the fertility journey is that we actually have pictures of the embryos that could be our kids one day, and we can actually show, like, we have way more information about how this new person came to be than most people have. So
yeah,
look for the bright side.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.